Liam, welcome to the This New Way podcast.
Thanks for having me, Aydin. And it doesn't feel in any way weird that we've just been chatting for the past 20 minutes, and then you just had that intro.
Yeah, I know. We had this hour scheduled, and we started talking, and I'm like, yeah, we're like 20 minutes in, haven't pressed record yet. We better press record and get to the.
Papaya to go to your birthday party, a bunch of different variables kind of connected to that, which was great. We should have hit record for that, but
And for everybody who's wondering, Liam and I do know each other, a long time back. We're not talking about these topics on like our first ever meeting. So yes, it is true. I am having my 40th birthday party actually tomorrow. So
congratulations.
thank you. So it should be a fun time, and I'm excited. You're going to be there. Lots of our friends are going to be there. It's going to be a great time, and there will probably be discussion of AI. And it's a good place to start to talk about this with you. This is like the topic we always talk about anyway. I feel like for the last year and a half, like it's been all AI all the time.
Yeah, and I feel like almost every month there's more happening in AI than happened in the entire history of tech startups over the last 20 years. It just feels so fast. Everything is moving so quickly. And it's great that you put together this podcast so that you can actually filter the signal from the noise and hopefully get the valuable information out to as many people as possible.
Yeah, totally. So we were talking about, I think, Liam, maybe a good place for us to start is, I know you're really famous and big in the world of remote work. We're just talking about you were on the Morning Brew Daily, which is a podcast I listen to, where I get most of my news. It's I guess like the second biggest business podcast there is, and you were just on it. So why are you so famous, Liam? Like, what is your background? Maybe just tell us a little bit about who you are, your company, just so people get a sense before we start diving into all things AI.
That's a really long story, Aydin. I started working remotely back in like 2008, 2009. So actually, I went to McGill University, which I'm about a 15-minute drive from here in Montreal. And I was going to become a professor. That was what I was going to do with my life until I actually ended up teaching my very first class in grad school. And I started with 300 students at the beginning of the semester and ended up with less than 150 by the end. And the worst academic reviews in the history of the department. And the department had been in existence since like 1876 or something like that. Like it was just horrifically bad. I walked into my supervisor's office and I said, I don't think I'm very good at this. And he said, no, you are not. And I said, so what do you think I should do with my life? And he said, well, you got to get pretty good at this teaching thing if that's what you want to do as a career. So either get better at that or figure out something else to do. And 6 weeks later, I threw a master's thesis under his door and I was out into the real world. And that's where I actually started my first business, which was an online tutoring company.
By the way, like before we talk about that, I've known you for a long time. I did not know this. The story of you almost becoming a professor. I feel like I'm learning something. I'm kind of surprised I'm learning something new about you, but that's
That would
pretty
have been
cool.
weird, huh? Professor Liam.
Yeah, a bit
I
weird.
just like
I didn't know that
how
we would have been friends, to be honest.
yeah, so we hired an academic just recently, a couple months back, like 6 months back. And I was talking to our director of HR, and our director of HR was like, he was kind of a dick, right? And I was like, yeah, he totally was. It's just like academics have this I'm better than you, ivory tower mentality, which was one of the reasons why I quit academia, was it was just too difficult to be able to deal with, I don't know, the way that these people interacted. A lot of the reasons that I got at McGill for why things were done that way is, well, this is McGill. And I'm sure probably a lot of people have the same thing, like, well, this is Harvard, this is Yale, this is Oxford. And I just didn't really like that. And things move so slowly. So got into the private sector, started my own tutoring business through Skype. So like Riverside and Zoom did not exist. Skype worked about half the time. And the problem that I had inside of that business, which was I couldn't actually equate for the hours worked with a tutor. So a tutor would work for like 10 hours with a student, and I'd bill a student for 10. The student would come to me and say, well, I didn't work with my tutor for 10 hours. I worked with them for 5. I'd go to the tutor and say, what's up? He'd say, of course, I worked with him for 10. That's what I billed you. So I'd end up having to refund the student 5 hours and pay the tutor the full 10 hours. And that was just destroying the business. So I needed a way to authenticate, like third party authenticate hours worked when someone was working remotely, which is where I ended up working with my now business partner, Rob Rawson, at Time Doctor, which we've been running for almost 14 years.
Oh,
Just
amazing.
wild.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy. So what does Time Doctor do if you were to boil it down?
Workforce analytics for the workday, particularly for remote and hybrid teams. So if you have a team, we have team members in 46 different countries all over the world. If you work in a distributed team, you can actually figure out how long someone is working for you inside of that company for payroll purposes. But then also, too, you can analyze why is someone not productive at their job? What's a barrier inside of their workflow that they're trying to, that you can help them unlock as an example? Do they need more training? Do they not understand the task? Time Doctor can do that. And some of the stuff that we're doing with artificial intelligence, as we've spoken about through Fellow, is really kind of moving in the direction of like a work co-pilot that just allows you to be able to do your best work and have an AI that helps you do it better.
Yeah, yeah. So we're gonna dive into a lot of that, and you also have this thing called running remote. What's that?
Yeah. So we started that back in 2018, and it is the largest conference on remote work. And we were doing it before COVID, which automatically means that we were cool. And it's a conference on how to build and scale remote teams. It's a passion project of mine. I call it my dessert business because we don't make any money at it. But I love getting founders and directors of HR of remote friendly businesses together once a year to be able to collaborate and talk about how to build bigger and better remote companies.
So lots of things. Again, Liam is my friend who's doing remote before everybody was doing remote. You know, founder of the largest remote work conference, like he said. So, and you're thinking about AI every day because this idea of workplace analytics, is very relevant. I feel like we're going to get to a place where it's not just going to be human employees. We're going to have virtual workers, and you're probably going to have to figure out how to have analytics on those sorts of things as well. But let's start with this, which is, the first question I have for you is how has AI impacted Time Doctor?
That changes like week to week, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. Actually, the biggest way that it's impacted Time Doctor is that I think we're getting our groove back. I think we're becoming less corporate and we're now moving faster because we are forced to move faster. And for anyone that's worked in a startup, like pre seed, under 10 employees, got to just figure out how to get product market fit. That part of the business, we haven't done that for over a decade. And so now we're really getting into that flow again, which is incredibly exciting for us. There's so many opportunities for remote work and AI and work in AI in general that every single month my mind is blown. I'll give you a perfect example is very, very tactical. We had previously been identifying a website or an application inside of the Time Doctor network as productive or unproductive. And the way that we did that is by crowdsourcing our community, our user base. So if someone identified something as productive or unproductive, then that would just now be the new standard rating for it. And this was actually a really bad way to do it. And now with AI, we automatically redefined all of our websites and applications as productive or non-productive. But more importantly, we've actually now redefined the category based off of job type. So if you're a marketer, ads.facebook.com is productive. But if you're an engineer, it's unproductive. And so that was done like instantly. And it would have required hundreds of work hours for someone to be able to do that. And it also wouldn't have worked dynamically, synchronously. It would have been a single static, okay, we're doing the assessment and then we've got to do that work next month and the next month. And now through AI, under the hood, we're just doing it automatically, which is, it sounds like a small problem to solve, but it actually opens us up to be able to approach so many other productivity issues inside of work.
This is a very good point and something that I think about and I've heard from a lot of other people as well, which is it's interesting for you to talk about this idea of thinking about product market fit again. And for the audience, if you're not familiar, this is just the basic idea of, do you have a product that the market like really, really wants? Obviously, Time Doctor is, really large company now, has lots of customers. Obviously, you have product market fit. But the fact that you're questioning these sorts of like the idea of product market fit is, again, something I'm thinking about. A fellow, every founder, every CEO, every leader's thinking about is because AI changes the game so much that because so many new things are possible, you almost have to think about like, can I get better product market fit? Like, does my product market fit change because there are these new building blocks?
Or you might have product market fit collapse. So that opportunity space for where you currently have product market fit could be made redundant by AI in the future, or that the space could be smaller. So maybe bookkeepers become completely redundant and 50% of them are no longer needed inside of on planet Earth, right? That's probably an extreme case, but let's just say that that's true. Well, that's 6% of our user base. So all of a sudden, 3% of our user base disappears, right? And that significantly impacts our overall numbers. Something else that I was thinking about as well, which was a really great interview between Lex Friedman and Mark Andreessen. Mark Andreessen is like the best investor basically in the history of mankind. He's been very, 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 very right historically over the last 20 years. And he said,
Also, the founder of Netscape.
yes, he said, we see two different types of AI companies. Category one is like they add AI to their already functional applications. So like Fellow is a perfect example of that. Time Doctor is a really great example of that. So like making it easier to answer email through AI would be an example of that. And then there's category two, which is, well, I don't want to make it easier to answer my emails. I want an AI to just answer my emails. So kind of reconceptualizing the second category, which is the AI just does all the work and the human is no longer needed in order to be able to run that transaction. And he's saying all of the current companies are basically doing category A and a very small minority are doing category B. The failure rate is much higher on category B, but if any of those win, they're multi-billion-dollar companies instantaneously. And so I'm doing a lot of thinking inside of Time Doctor to be able to figure out, well, maybe we should slice off a team and focus on category B problems as opposed to, and while also keeping 90% of our energy on what's making money for us as a business, because you cannot distract yourself from that core piece. And depending upon where you are in terms of your growth, maybe you can. So if you're doing $500,000 in revenue, you could quite possibly throw that out the window and say, we're going to completely reconceptualize the product. But if you're doing 50 million in revenue, that's a really bad idea. So a lot of companies, I think, are in that space right now, trying to figure out which direction to go.
It's something that, we're thinking a lot about at Fellow as well. And so the problem is when, like you said, when you have a business that already produces revenue, you can make the current product a lot better. You can do things that you never imagined. You could solve problems like in a way that would have been ideal, but too idealistic, right? In the past. But AI makes those things possible. But the problem is that, like you said, the best solution might be to build an agent. It might be to build something from scratch, something that you would have to reimagine. And it doesn't really, like, it's really hard to morph a current product that has customers that are using it a certain way. And it almost like it is a question that I think a lot of people are thinking about, which is, do I do what you're saying, which is siphon off a team, get them to build something from scratch so that they don't have the baggage of the past almost, right? Like they can be truly creative, solve problems that are relevant to your company and like the mission of your company, but not really have to worry about, oh, if I remove this feature, will my current customers be pissed? Or if I change this interface and there is no interface, there's just like an agent that you talk to, like what would happen? And at least they don't have to worry about like damaging that 50 million in revenue.
We have a team that we've set up called Chainsaw, which we call our research and development team. And the reason why we call it Chainsaw is all the other product and engineering teams are focusing on sharpening the axe. So like making our axe more effective. but their job is not to sharpen an axe. Their job is to build a chainsaw. It's a completely different thing, right? So throw out all of the lessons that we've learned from previously, but try to solve the same problems from a completely different perspective. And so far, that team has actually been relatively successful. We've been working on these problems for about a year. And counterintuitively, I would probably say we've had more innovation in the past year than we've had in the last five, just because we changed our premise, which was, well, we're not adding an extra feature to Time Doctor. We're actually building a completely different product or conceptual product. And then we're seeing how we could provide value to our current Time Doctor customers. Because I think at the end of the day, where we're going is R&D is going to get cheaper and marketing and branding is going to get more expensive. So the ability to be able to make a true connection with a customer, that's only going to go up in value. And the actual execution, building out the thing, is going to go down, get significantly exponentially cheaper.
Yeah. One of the stories that you told me, once upon a time was the story of how you first started thinking about AI was, I think you were at a conference and, you heard something about the margin of a company. Or, do you want to tell that story?
Oh, yeah. So I was at a dental transcription conference, which sounds even more exciting than it was. It was riveting. And so I had two of my clients' customers that I was with, and they were testing this new transcription product where a doctor was trying to get information out of a patient. And they told people from the audience, scream as much as you want, try to disrupt this conversation that they're having. And it was perfect. Like the transcriptions just came out beautifully. And what a lot of people don't know is when you go to a doctor and the doctor is collecting that information, it actually goes to another service the vast majority of the time and is transcribed and basically restructured for your medical records. And so that's what a lot of these agencies would do that are customers of Time Doctor. And so the two guys, the transcription companies were like, or not the transcription companies, the dental companies said, oh my God, we're paying my client $2,000 a month for this service. And this is $100 a month for switching. And that was that was maybe like a year and a half post ChatGPT. And I realized, okay, those cracks are now forming. And I do think when you look at things like Crossing the Chasm, which is a great book to just kind of understand technological adoption over time, it's probably you're going to see those cracks. And then about 6 months later, a freight train is going to come through. And that's where you're going to see real user leakage. And we're starting to see that now. A lot of the customers that I talk to say, and when I ask them, are you going to contract headcount in 2025? 90% say yes, due to AI, which is scary. They haven't done it yet, but they all think that it's going to happen, which is a scary concept to be able to take a look at. So it's my job to be able to, number one, create value for them that's outside of that particular realm. But then also, number two, if you're listening to this podcast right now, I think you need to make yourself unreplaceable. And that really means just by upskilling yourself as it applies to artificial intelligence.
Yeah, yeah, it's very true. Especially, every SaaS business, most SaaS businesses are, they charge price. Their price is a per user pricing, right? So if you have less employees working at companies in general, and you charge on a per employee basis, that could be a problem. And so, a lot of things will have to be reinvented. So one thing I wanted to chat about, okay, so we've talked about, Time Doctor and how some of the changes that have been made within the company, as a result of AI. You talked about Team Chainsaw and building out a new product and innovating in a way that you haven't before. What about in your personal day to day? What are some things that AI has changed about the way that, you go about your day?
So the biggest one that I would say has happened to my life is Google's dead to me. I almost exclusively use some form of LLM. And until about a week and a half ago, that was OpenAI primarily, their 4.0 model, fast. What's the capital of Zaire? I don't know what it is. That's why I have that's why I have an AI to help me with those types of things. How tall is the Eiffel Tower? Like, if I have an 8.6% interest rate on $6 million over the next 14 years, what is my average return in 16 years? Like those types of things, Google can't do anywhere near as well as an LLM can. That's probably the biggest thing that's changed in my like day-to-day life. But in work, there's a lot more direct applications. One of the things that I have been playing with for the past 3 months, and OpenAI just came out with it, was Do Browser, which I think I showed you at one point. And what it allows you to do is it's a simple Chrome extension. And you just say, hey, can you scrape all of Aydin's podcast episodes from YouTube and put it into a spreadsheet? And it opens up YouTube, it opens up a Google Doc, and it just starts doing the work, which is now OpenAI's Operator, which just came out about a week and a half ago. I don't know when we're putting this live, but again, all this stuff is like thing so quickly. And literally in the last week and a half, we bought one license of OpenAI's newer model, the $200 per user per month model. And we just canceled it because DeepSeek is better than that $200 per user per month model, and it's free. And we're running it on LM Studio. Have you heard about this, Aydin?
No, what is LM Studio?
So LM Studio is a desktop application that can download the models to your computer, to your local computer, and you can run them directly on your computer. So you can run 4.0. I've got all of the different DeepSeek models on there. I've got Claude, and it basically just runs it directly off of your own rig. So you're not going to be sending any of your secrets back to China.
Okay. And so it's not, I mean, you said rig, right? So this isn't, most personal computers still can't run DeepSeek, for example. Like this is more
I have a
heavy
MacBook
duty.
Pro, I don't know, last year, 2023, 2024 model, and it's about a 9 gig file. You download the entire model and you're ready to go. It's surprising how light that model is in comparison to everything else. And I'll give you another context of something else. We run OCR inside of Time Doctor, which is object character recognition. So if you're grabbing video of something like someone completing a task, as an example, it can analyze each of those frames and tell you what's happening. So an AI can describe it. And we were using Gemini for that in our chainsaw team. And it was costing about $2 to $3 per user per month. That's what was our breakout costing for that. And with DeepSeek, it's 14 cents. And that happened last week.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah, it's just the speed at which all of these things are running is mind blowing. And until a week and a half ago, we thought it was going to cost $500 billion to be able to build the next model. And now we know with DeepSeek, and another model just came out today that's actually faster than DeepSeek from China as well, that costs $10 million. So the entire premise that you need all of this infrastructure in order to be able to build out these models is has been proven incorrect. And I just don't know where we're going to go next, because we could probably, like, in our companies, we could probably build our own proprietary models specifically built for something. One of the big problems I've seen inside of AI models is they're very helpful. Like, they are all geared towards helping you. But let's say you wanted to build your own proprietary project management AI that would like facilitate project management and basically be your project manager for your company. Well, you wouldn't want that AI to be helpful. You'd actually want that AI to be kind of bitchy and be like, hey, Aydin, why have you not done this podcast with Liam yet? Hey, you're supposed to edit it by tonight. It has not been done. You need to do this tonight. What's going on here? I'm going to tell your boss about that. Like, that's the kind of, so those models don't really work very well for those types of applications, but it was completely out of our realm of possibility to build a proprietary model. And maybe in a year we can, which is wild.
It's super interesting. I just want to kind of recap a little bit the things that you talked about. So the Drew browser, this was really cool. I remember we were in Tremblant, hanging out at a ski chalet, and yeah, you were showing me this extension which everybody should go check out, and it literally just did things like a human would. So if you asked me to go do that task, like go find all the YouTube videos and put them in a spreadsheet, Do Browser does what a human would do, and you just literally see it unfolding in front of your eyes. And now, OpenAI's operator. And then the other thing, which is just mind blowing to me, is you literally are saying that you had a task that, say, OCR, and this is optical character recognition. This is just taking like images of text and turning in them into text. And something that would have cost you, you said $14, now costs 14 cents.
$2, $2 to $3 per month is now a 14-cent cost for us. Running it, by the way, on our own rack, because DeepSeek it's an open source model. So what we did is we literally downloaded DeepSeek OCR 9 gig file, and we ran it on. We have a couple like really high end desktop Macs that we use for some like video editing. That we usually it's on like a cloud server, and it runs it perfectly. And I was like, we could run the entire, like, it's actually almost going back to when Aydin, I remember in your previous company, when you had your own server racks. This was before the age of cloud computing. And now we've gone back to that in such an ironic way, which is wild.
You know what's super interesting? Like this is a question that people at my company also asked me, or like, how does this affect us? The incoming DeepSeek model, and I think like the biggest thing is it's not about how much money it costs to get the model up and running, right? It's more that the inference cost is so much less, and like you said, I mean, who knows what the exact numbers are, but say 90% cheaper than what it would have cost you to use any of like the other main models. And so if something is that much cheaper, it kind of leads me to believe that everything that we're using now, it's not unreasonable to think that it'll be 90% cheaper in the next year, right? And so what that means to me is, kind of go nuts when you're building your products, and use as many API calls as you need to, because this stuff is going to get cheaper. And it really like gives me almost like the mental permission to go out and go crazy and just like build the best, most addictive product that is just going to deliver so much value, and not really be so afraid of like, is it practical to do those things because it's going to cost so much money to do.
You hit the nail on the head. Originally, when we looked at this technology, we are building something that allows you to essentially figure out how is someone doing something correctly versus incorrectly. So what's the best way of completing a task, like answering a support ticket, versus the incorrect way of completing a task? And this is what we're using OCR for. And then we built the technology and we priced it out, and we're like, oh, it's too expensive. Let's put it back on the shelf. Because it's like, our customers are not going to pay an extra $6, $8, $10 for this on top of what is a $10 per user per month tool. We just flipped it this week. Like, we've added in our guiding principles of the R&D team, Chainsaw, which is forget about how much things cost. Solve one customer's problem perfectly. And then let's see if we can scale that. It actually goes back to the Y Combinator mindset of do things that don't scale, but it's kind of in a like do things that are not profitable. That's a better way to say it. Just figure out how to solve the problem and then solve the economics of it down the road. Because I would say that the models are not going to get anywhere near as smart as they're going to get cheap. They're going to get way cheaper in comparison to way smarter, which is like if you ever look at a PlayStation 2, right? And the first launch title is like Tomb Raider. That's like all polygons and it looks really crap. And then 8 years later, at the end of that life cycle with the same game system, it looks like a completely new generation of gaming. It's because people got really good at understanding how that technology works and they were able to optimize it properly. We're like year 2 of basically the LLM new generation of tech startups. What's going to happen on year 8? Even if we don't have a huge jump forward, of which we are, it's going to be huge. I thought I would just kind of show you a couple things because I thought that would probably be the best way to approach this. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
First of all, I thought I'd just show you Do Browser. this to me it's like Operator, but again, it's actually significantly cheaper than Operator. It costs about $10 per user per month from what I understand. So I could say like, find podcasts of Liam Martin and put them in a Google spreadsheet. Now, sometimes, by the way, this this thing scares the crap out of me because it also knows my credit card. And at some points, it said, "Oh yeah, we can scrape that. I found a website that will do it. It's $8,000. Do you want to proceed?" And I'm like, "No, stop." So you need to be mindful of what kind of access you give it because it will let you do um, whatever you want. So it's going to go to Google right now, and it's thinking. And while that's processing, I also want to show you this tool. So this is LM Studio, which is just basically running this particular model, which is, by the way, the new model that just came out, Quen, in the last 48 hours, which will probably be old news by the time that we're currently running this. And this model is better than DeepSeek or ChatGPT, which is, and it's a local version that you can basically just eject it from your system whenever you want. You can see here, it's opening up a spreadsheet.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I mean, this is why, this is why the stock market has been behaving the way it has. I mean, Nvidia. I mean, we'll see where, depending on where this gets when this gets published, but it's down significantly from its high as a result of all the news.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is just an example of what it can do, right? So it's like, it's pulling podcasts, and I could say, give me 10 more podcasts, and it will just, again, pre-populate it. So when you think about the tasks that you could give to like a data entry person or to a researcher or anything like that, the opportunities are really quite endless, right?
And so this is really cool. So you can basically do this and go grab coffee, and this is just going to run in the background, right? Like you don't have to stop, and you don't have to have this browser in focus for this. Yeah, and I feel like you and I would have maybe in another scenario gone to Upwork or something like that and hired a whole bunch of workers that would have done all this kind of stuff manually. Like go search on Google for these things, and then take those things and put it in the spreadsheet and so on and so forth. But you literally, like, this is something that a human would have done, and you just had Do Browser do this for you.
Yeah. And you can also grab a screenshot of that section, and you can actually like pull it right into the application like this. And you can say, "Hey, can you fill out the links? You missed the links to the podcasts uh, on the C column." And then it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. But you get the concept. Like the idea of where we're going with this is the ability to be able to just collect this type of information. And this is so fast. Like I didn't even know I was on these podcasts, and they're here and they're populated. It's so fast to be able to see where this is going. So that's Do Browser. Another thing that I wanted to show you is if I go to my own version of ChatGPT, one of the things that I've been working on is, and this was something that we worked on inside of our own company, is we use something called disk profiles, which is basically like a Myers-Briggs psychometric testing system. And we paid for everyone to get a disk profile inside of our senior leadership. So about 22 people. And I loaded all of those disk profiles into it. And now whenever I need to talk to one of those people about an important issue, I ask this question. I go to the system and I figure out, okay, what should let's say like, how should Leah Martin and Dwayne Dufault collaborate? Who's our CRO? So that's a perfect example. And then it will tell me based off the disk profile. So Liam is the chief innovation officer. Dwayne is the chief revenue officer. His profile is he's a high D dominance with some influence. I'm an influence with some steadiness. I'm peaceful, polite, thorough, pleasant, approachable, independent. That's very nice. Strong-willed, hard-headed, direct, concentrating, determined, sensible, traditional. That's not as nice, at least in my opinion. So then potential collaboration strengths. And actually, here's a very cool version that they just kind of give you like a spreadsheet on that. And that is so valuable for me. And some of the things that I have been really excited to see here is I put in Google presentations, Google Slides inside of this disc profile analyzer. And I'll say, I'm about to present this to Dwayne Dufault, our CRO. What specific changes should I make to be able to make sure that I can get Dwayne to agree to give me a salesperson to work in the research and development team, which is something that I dealt with last week. And then it makes changes to the spreadsheet, or sorry, to the slides, which is incredibly exciting.
So this is super interesting. Just to kind of like recap this for the folks. So you basically created a ChatGPT project, and into the project, and what's nice about ChatGPT projects is you can just load these files, and so you basically uploaded everybody's disk profiles into this project, and then this is like this executive coach that you've built, and you can literally say, I'm about to go have this, tough conversation, or I want this conversation to go well. How do I communicate with this person? Like, you tell me how I should communicate this message. And it does a near perfect job of doing exactly that.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and then
So
people are going to say, Liam, how the hell are you so convincing all the time?
exactly. Right.
I will
And it's
never tell you my disk profile. And I hope that you cannot guess it.
actually, we could probably go into that a little bit later, but this is how you configure one. So it's actually relatively simple. You name it, you describe it, here are the instructions, here are all of the different executives, what their roles are. And then this GPT analyzes the attached PDF, which gives the disk profiles of the senior leadership team, allowing anyone accessing this GPT to gain insight on individual team members and how they interact for work. That's it. And then you include the PDF, and the AI just understands it directly and it works perfectly. And I've given this to everyone in the team so that they can then ask those questions themselves before they want to be able to go into a conversation.
Yeah, this is super interesting. Again, not very hard to do. I think like most executive teams have some sort of a personality sort of assessment that they've done, or if they haven't, they should. And now you can use ChatGPT projects to help you all communicate better.
The thing that blew our disc profile person away, because these cost, I think it costs like $100 to $200 per person to do an assessment, and you get a disc facilitator that was up on a Zoom call. And then I loaded them automatically inside of this GPT and built it in, I mean, we're talking, it's under a paragraph. I built it in 2 minutes. And then I started asking questions. And she's like, how do you know so much about disc profiles? And how do you, like, have you done this before? And then I said, no, I just threw it into a GPT. And that's an example of how their business model should change, because they're thinking to themselves, oh, well, we should have human facilitators that do all of this work. When in reality, actually, it would be much more valuable to have something like this, because I don't remember your disc profile. That's something that I got in a meeting 6 months ago, and it's really difficult for me to remember everyone and their little quirks. But this tool constantly is my little co-pilot on those quirks, which is really cool. One last thing I want to show you is we've talked a lot about LLMs, but then there's like LLMs in application, and a tool that's completely blown up in the last few months is something called Lovable. And so Lovable is a coding platform in the English language. So you no longer need to know how to code. As a regular human being that just exists and has never coded anything in their entire lives, you can go out and you can code an application. And I actually have this, I'm going to post this on my YouTube channel next week. It was a 4-hour video of me going from beginning to end, building a completely functional app that allows you to be able to provide anonymous feedback to an employer, and then have the AI analyze that data so that you can figure out, as the employer, what are the issues with your organization, and who are some particular people that maybe need like some extra management training or leadership training or something like that.
So this is just, I just want to emphasize this is mind blowing because you basically built, I mean, there's software tools that a lot of people pay for, right? There's employee engagement software tools. Some of these cost quite a bit, not to throw anyone under the bus and talk about the companies, but you literally built an employee engagement tool that is super powerful that you use to survey all of your employees. You get what they're saying, what they're feeling, and it uses AI to analyze the output. And you literally built the whole thing in 4 hours, only through prompting, no coding, and that's just mind blowing. And so I don't know if you had a subscription to such software, but if you did, I would imagine that you would now go ahead and cancel and maybe save, I don't know, $40,000 a year probably for your company just because you spent 4 hours building this tool. That's mind
Yeah,
blowing.
I mean, if anyone wants it, I'll include the URL in the show notes because hey, doesn't bother me. Costs me nothing to be able. It's costing me nothing to host it. Very simple. It's like I'm very happy. Did I get my tasks completed? And then I could even say today I interacted with Aydin on a podcast that went relatively well, and I also had a podcast on Morning Brew, which I was pretty nervous about. And later on today, I'm going to meet with Laura, our VP of Marketing, about some other issue. And then it would just collect all of that information, which it just transcribed now, and then you submit it, and then boom, you get that data, and then you can do AI analysis like, is Liam? No, are people nervous at work, and do they do a lot of podcasts? And again, this is all based off of like relatively simplistic technology that's like 6 months old, right?
Yeah.
In terms of understanding it, you can just pull that stuff out based on feedback. There's some nervousness amongst employees regarding public speaking or presentations, right? And it's like that is something that you can.
And it's anonymized it. Isn't that like insane that you just programmed this thing to answer that question? It didn't say Liam was nervous. It says that there was some nervousness. Like it's amazing. And again, I just want to kind of emphasize this is kind of the era that we're going through, which is you can build these applications for yourselves, for your own companies. Lovable.dev is what Liam's using. And so when he posts a link on how he built this. We're also going to put that in the show notes. And of course, subscribe. If you subscribe to our newsletter, we're going to have more detailed breakdowns of how to use these various tools. But there's a few, right? There's Lovable, there's Bolt, there's Replit. All of these are like, if the best way for me to describe this is you literally enter a prompt and you say, build me an application that is an employee engagement survey. You press enter and then it starts building it. You watch the code being written, it runs it. And then of course you have to interact with it and go back and forth. But it is like you're talking to a human developer that's just building it right in front of your eyes, but just typing really, really fast.
Yeah, a lot of people at the very beginning of the AI revolution were thinking that people like customer support reps or call center agents would be completely removed from the workforce, or they would be the most heavily impacted by AI. I now think it's engineers. And the reason why is for nothing else than engineers are really focused on replacing themselves for some weird reason and making themselves completely redundant. They're not going after the accountants or lawyers, which I would love. They're going after the engineers. And there's a whole bunch of companies right now that are trying to solve that problem. So if you are HR professional right now that wants to build a tool in the HR space, you can do it in days for nothing. And you can probably run something you can generate revenue off of. Maybe not tens of millions of dollars, but there are lots of people right now that are using tools like Lovable, and they're building web applications that are making $500,000, $1 million a year, which is also an incredibly exciting concept, but something that's probably going to be so different in the next 6 months that it's not even worth us really kind of investigating in a deep way because the technology is going to evolve so quickly.
Yeah. So this has been amazing, Liam. So for everybody, if you go to thisnewway.com, sign up to the newsletter because we're going to detail, the tools that Liam talked about so you can have those things and then share the clips with your team. So, part of this show, the idea is like take these clips of these most important parts and send it to your team. And this is how we're going to get every company, operating on this new rhythm and using AI. And so sign up for the newsletter. Liam, the final question I want to ask you is, who else should we have on this show that you think is AI forward, doing, cool things in AI? Maybe you know them, maybe you don't. Like, who would you love to see on This New Way show?
Pointed to the last comment that I made is another Canadian entrepreneur is Greg Eisenberg. He's doing great stuff on his YouTube channel right now. And he's literally just showing how people can use prompt-based AI programming to be able to build interactive web applications and mobile apps at what was before an inconceivable level. And it's really exciting to be able to see those. So that's one person that is really amazing. And then someone else who I think you should really have on the show is Wade Foster from Zapier, because that's another person that's been in the absolute forefront. Zapier is an API tool that basically connects all of these AI tools together. And as we get more into what's called agentic AI, basically something like the Do browser is an agent that works on your behalf, they're going to need access to different APIs. And it's a very exciting time for something like Zapier, where I think what they did before, which is build a multi-billion-dollar business, it could be exponentially bigger in the future.
Yeah, but both amazing guests. So you have been summoned. This is your notice. We'll get you on the show. Liam, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on this show, and I'm excited for this to go live. I think it'll be bigger than your appearance on the Morning Brew. So we will see.
I'll check the views. We'll see which one's bigger.
All right. Thanks
All
again,
right.
Liam.
Thanks to you.
And that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of This New Way. If you like the content, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you can get notified when we post the next episode. See you next time.